Okay, so now for your week 3 Learn Together, I want you to take last week's code that you wrote for the daily decision, and probably not to a big surprise of anybody, I want you to and we call this refactor, is when you take something you've already written and you write it in a new way or a new style. It's not even necessarily that you're adding new functionality to something, although you could here, and I think it is good to. But really, the idea is to write it in a new way because now that you've learned functions through the code along for this week, now let's use that. So I've just laid out some requirements to give you guidance here. So make sure. So first, I want you to write at least two functions. Okay. Um, from what you had last week. Okay. And the function that you have that I've given you is not counted in there. Okay. So you can still use it. I still want you to display on page. So, but you don't count that as part of it. So make sure one of your functions has a return value. And we saw this definitely in the code along where we declare a value or just return a value from inside of a function to to a variable that's declared in either another function or out in global. And here's another thing, and it definitely is something to work towards, is to see if you can figure out how to use that return value in another function call, right? Or just pass it into the display on page function, but really learning, and this is a very common pattern we see in programming, where we have a function that returns a value, we then pass that value into another function. Okay. And then here's one of the things I want you to try to do is try to minimize your global variables declared, therefore used. And the reason I say that is that that is one of the benefits of learning how to write good functions, is that we really can mostly eliminate global variables because we can either pass them around, set them, and then we can even, in one sense, use one of our functions as what we might consider more global, and not global, but a place to declare variables that we might then use in the function calls. But more than anything, just try. I'm not going to mark off if you do have some. I just want you to try. So, like last week, push your code to GitHub. Give us your GitHack link. I will link that. I'm not going to go over how to do that. You can check out last week's, but it's basically the same process. Write something about your experience in doing this work and any challenges you encountered. And then reply to two of your fellow students' posts. And here's the key, and I want to see this in your reply, is I actually want you to um, click on their Git hack link, open it, run through their code using the debugger tools, and review their code and make a comment about their code. So just doing a generic reply is not going to get it this week. I want you to actually do a substantive reply about the code itself. And I showed in week 3, actually week 2, in my video post of my code, more about how to do the debugger tools, but I'm hoping at this point, although I haven't recorded it, in this week's attendance, I'll go over that as well. So, and how will I grade this? Well, it's based on the above requirements, outputting to a page. Did you meet the requirements? Did you write two functions? Did you use at least one return value? Again, using a value either in the display or returned, using a return value in another function. Okay. And like before, and I'd be curious of your feedback about this. Was anybody encouraged to get it done early so they didn't have to do replies? This might be a week to think about that. But I would tell you, for even those that are working ahead, it is still a really good practice to be able to read somebody else's code. You learn a lot, like reading a book. You learn a lot about reasoning. You learn a lot about the world. You learn a lot about reading code. So the sooner you get, and sometimes you really either appreciate your code or they see things that you might want to improve in your own code. So, like last week, when after I post this, um, and David beat me to week 3, so that's awesome. But I will post mine and I will go over my output. Here is my output in the browser. The one nice thing, there's many nice things about functions. Trust me, once you start writing them, it's hard to write anything else, and really learning how to write good functions that have very simple inputs, very simple outputs is a good idea. So the thing I want you to also do, and I should say this in there, but I'll say it here, is you want to run, matter of fact, I'll just show you the end of my code. Like, I set this up so that I ran it for each day of the week. And I ran it to, I didn't on this last one, and I see this because I just duplicated that line. But what I want you to do is make sure that you are testing all the branches of your code with data to make sure it is producing the kind of output you would expect based on your logic. Okay. So you want, again, the nice thing about functions is, for me, my first call to a function is set up the data, and then I passed, in this case, a few variables, right? I pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things into my first function. So in a sense, my setup data becomes kind of my new global variable setup. Okay, so that's what you need to do for this week. Have fun with it, and I'll talk to you soon.